It is time. Super Bowl 60 is just around the corner, and it's time that we dive deep into the matchup between the Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots and decide a winner. Obviously, as always, I'm excited for the game, but this year, unlike I feel like in past years with the Mahomes and the Brady of it all in these past 15 or so Super Bowls, I feel like we're not doing the whose legacy is on the line kind of thing in this game, and I think that's kind of a refreshing change of pace. Don't get me wrong, the legacy talk is fun, and I honestly can't remember the last time we had a Super Bowl that felt this unlikely at the beginning of a season. Football's a funny old game. If you pick the Patriots and the Seahawks to meet in the Super Bowl back in September, I still fundamentally believe your process was flawed even though you'd have been right. History tells us to pick the teams with the best quarterbacks, the ones that have been knocking on the door, and the ones that have even knocked it down. But alas, here we sit. How did we get here? The Patriots won 4 games last year. 4. They finished below the Jets. Rarely throughout NFL history have we seen such a turnaround, so dramatic. Obviously, the hiring of Mike Vrabel was the biggest move of the Patriots offseason that got them to this point, and has been an absolute home run, so much so that it felt like he was going to be Belichick's successor when he was in Tennessee, and now obviously he's in New England. But what I've been really intrigued by this season is the things he's brought with him. The Patriots spent a ton of money in the offseason, bringing in what I would call floor-raising players to establish a baseline level of competence and a winning attitude after a few dreadful seasons. Think of Milton Williams on his big contract coming off a Super Bowl win, Carlton Davis, a veteran and a champion, Harold Landry was one of Vrabel's guys in Tennessee, Robert Spillane had been around a winning culture in Pittsburgh, even Austin Hooper had played in a Super Bowl. Hell, even their high-profile draft picks in Travion Henderson and Will Campbell were absolute blue chippers from some of the best NFL machines in the country. And of course they got Stephon Diggs, a guy who has seldom in his career been on a bad team. Even in Minnesota, he made the NFC Championship game in 17, divisional round in 19. And then, of course, he went to Buffalo and came up short on a team really competing for a championship. The Texans' season ended in a torn ACL, bringing about doubt about whether he could still play, but I've been really impressed with what he's brought, in spite of all the bad headlines that really began in the offseason on a boat. But moving on, this kind of baseline veteran competence took some of the pressure off Drake May to be the leader of the entire franchise, in my opinion. That plus putting Josh McDaniels in his ear, knowing McDaniels probably wouldn't be a head coach again for at least a little while, totally set Drake up to succeed this year. What was not so easy to see coming was how quickly Drake would be able to elevate everyone else. Part of this is on Vrabel, an expert game manager who rarely finds his teams losing in the field position battle or receiving penalties for mental errors. So while the talent around May this season hasn't been otherworldly, I think the environment Vrabel has built back up in New England is ideal for him to succeed. And now here they are. I've said my piece on the Patriots' run through the playoffs in past videos. If you haven't seen those, go check them out. My point has been that while the Patriots haven't been the most impressive team I've seen make a run to the Super Bowl, they absolutely deserve it in this year's AFC field. As for the Seahawks, now they've had their own little turnaround, of course. They won 10 games last year, actually, but missed the playoffs in a loaded NFC. Kind of shockingly let Geno Smith go to the Raiders and brought in Sam Darnold on this kind of under-the-market deal that was kind of a product of Sam melting down at the end of his Minnesota days. But obviously, it's been more than a bargain. That was the headline of the offseason, but they were still incredibly busy, trading star receiver DK Metcalf to the Steelers and letting a franchise legend walk in Tyler Lockett, essentially turning the receiving core over to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was coming off a breakout second year. They also signed Cooper Kupp in free agency, bringing him back to his home of the Pacific Northwest. You can see the vision. They brought in Clint Kubiak, son of Gary Kubiak and Shanahan disciple, to call the offense after a tough stint in New Orleans. Darnold had run a similar system in Minnesota successfully. JSN was going to be their Justin Jefferson, even their Cooper Kupp circa 2021, moving him all over the formation, run the ball, and use heavy play action to give JSN time on long developing routes down the field. Darnold has proven that he has the arm to get the ball there. Despite all these good things and with the benefit of hindsight, it was still tough to see before the season how this offense would work to the tune of a Super Bowl trip. And sometimes it didn't. But that didn't matter because their defense was, at the very least, the best in the NFC this year. Mike Macdonald had turned around Baltimore's defense, and he got to work with Seattle immediately. If you go into their recent draft history, and this is a credit to John Schneider, their recent high defensive draft picks have all been home runs. Devin Witherspoon, Nick Eamon-Warry, Byron Murphy, Boye Mafe, all while building up the offensive line with Gray Zabel and Charles Cross. But Seattle went out and spent money this offseason just like New England. Despite drafting and developing clearly being the most key thing for NFL franchises in terms of roster building, this has been the year showing the value of this baseline competence thing that veterans bring. On top of Darnold and Kupp, they added DeMarcus Lawrence to a D-line already with Leonard Williams making a lot of money. They re-signed Ernest Jones and Jaron Reed. And of course, mid-season, they traded for a true game-shifting player in Rashid Shaheed. Shaheed was the kind of player crying out to be added to a contender after making a living catching bombs from Derek Carr and Spencer Rattler. Adding him to the Seattle team has seen them go up a level. Smith and Jigba is now not their only downfield threat, and he's one of the best kick returners in the league. Despite what the AFC was this year, the NFC was a true gauntlet, especially their own division, the NFC West. They got through it by just being the most all-around solid team, very few weaknesses, and extremely well coached. With Kubiak likely going to Vegas, they might see some sort of coordinator regression next season, but who cares about that? It's the Super Bowl. Here's how I think the game's going to go. The Pats are rightful underdogs in this game, despite I think having the better quarterback, but they're going to need to be opportunistic because Drake May is going to be under duress from the Seattle defense. Some consider it a feather in May's cap that he's seen 3 excellent defenses in the playoffs and won all 3 games, and I understand that, but he hasn't done much in these games to have you quaking in your boots if you're a Seahawks fan. The Pats are going to have to muddy this game up, get pressure on Darnold, see if he flinches, force turnovers, control the clock. Don't do anything to let the Seahawks defense get hot. Don't kick it to Shaheed. I'd expect the Pats to come out and play aggressive on offense if they can get any kind of a jump on Seattle, maybe a big play shot to Booty or Williams. It will be a kind of punch Seattle hasn't taken much this season. What you need to do is not panic when Seattle starts stringing together stops in the second and third quarter. Hope your defense keeps you in it. New England has good corners, but if I know anything from watching Jefferson, Kupp back in the day, and CeeDee Lamb lately, it's that your corners don't matter much when you're facing this receiver in this system. Kubiak, Darnold, and JSN are going to be matchup hunting the entire game. Get JSN on a linebacker, a safety, a slot corner. Seattle is going to dictate where he goes, meaning the Pats will have to commit bodies, plural, to him. This is my little way of saying Cooper Kupp could end up with a second Super Bowl MVP. Seattle is not going to be discouraged if New England shuts down the run early. They're committed to it, but usually only as a pretense to set up shot plays, which they do better than anyone. I think May will limit his mistakes in this game, but I think there will be some, and they will get punished because that's what Seattle does better than just about anybody. As highly as I think of May and McDaniels as a combination of quarterback and play caller, I'm just not so sure they can do what McVay and Stafford did to the Seattle team twice in a row. Sometimes when a team conquers a mountain in an NFC Championship game, it can turn the Super Bowl into a letdown spot. Think of the Chiefs last year, but sometimes it can lead to a team coasting. Think of the 49ers slaughtering the Chargers after winning a war with Dallas in 1994. That's more along the lines of how I think this one goes. Seattle gets its revenge for Malcolm Butler. Sam Darnold finishes the story. The Seahawks defeat the Patriots 30-16 to win their second Super Bowl. And I'm going to go with Smith and Jigba as my Super Bowl MVP. What an NFL season it has been. An odd but memorable one. Let's ride it out together one last time. Please like and subscribe and turn notifications on. I still have a little more content to put out before the big game. Enjoy the Super Bowl. See you next week when a new champ is crowned.